I'm usually not one much for retrospectives, at least not so soon after a brutal murder, which, make no mistake, is exactly what Witcher Blood Origins was. But the more I think about it, I can't help but feel that Blood Origins was merely just the last drop, the straw that finally broke the camel's back. And that a decade or two from here on, we will identify not Blood Origins, but this year as the moment where pop culture, or mainstream entertainment, was finally poisoned to the point of it being absolutely irreversible and untreatable. It's not dead yet, the zombie is still walking about, but we all know it's rotting at this point, and it is merely a question of time, and any treatment we even might feel so foolish as to attempt will be nothing more than a waste of time. Let's look through some of the things here, shall we? Because 2022 has been a remarkably poor year in terms of the more mainstream entertainment. A She-Hulk writer calls it the most comic-accurate show in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This refers to a pretty seething scree by Dan Slott, a Marvel writer most primarily famous for yelling at the fans, disowning them and attacking them whenever he can, and yet still apparently having a job, which is one of the reasons why the comic book universe is collapsing as quickly as it is. I mean, this guy can pretty much write professional chew toy in his bio for the amount of good and honest content he has given to the Comics Gate community over the years. And this guy is completely convinced that no, She-Hulk was actually great, you see. It was very fantastic. It was fantastic through and through. I don't know if the audience agrees. I really don't think they do. A 33% audience score, but as usual, a really high critic score. Now, that's not because the show is good. God help me, I have watched a little bit of it. It's something. I half regret not covering it in the way I usually do, because if nothing else, it was simply just one meme of bad entertainment after the other, but this of course a numerical stat we are all quite familiar with at this point. The institutional elites, the people who we once trusted to tell us what was good and not, have a drastically different opinion from literally everybody else. And this is merely one example. We've got, for example, the Witcher Blood Origin, which even the critics didn't like all that much, but whose audience score is even lower, a third of that again. You've got Resident Evil, another rather famous stinker, which I half regret not covering, with, again, it's not a great critic score by any stretch of the imagination, but it's still far higher than the audience score. What about The Lord of the Rings? The Rings of Power. A show that, in retrospect, I mean, it was better than it could have been. The Blood Origins taught me many valuable lessons about just how bad diversity and inclusion could be. So, you know, there's that. But the critics, well, they liked it. They quite loved it. And the thing is, this is despite the fact that most of the critics were still saying that it was basically just an empty, vapid mess. I remember, I know Forbes absolutely slaughtered it, but there was another publication that basically described the first episode by just talking about the CGI. Like, oh, and there was like a waterfall, there was Galadriel like climbing the mountain with knives and shit, and there was a troll, and never actually mentioning the story. And when they did, it was like, well, you know, the story kind of dragged for a bit there, and it was really boring, but it was still amazing, trust me. I don't, not in the slightest. Or Halo. Now that was a stinker that I did actually cover, and you know what? It had moments, but it was actually mildly Halo-esque. The first episode, for example, before he took off his goddamn helmets, which, I want to remind you, I called. I literally said, episode 1, that helmet is coming off, and Pablo Schreiber obliged me with that. Again, very high critic scores. Obi-Wan Kenobi, honestly, I'm amazed that it had a 63% audience score, honestly. Because, well, if you don't know a whole lot about Star Wars at all, even like lower than me, like for me, Star Wars is a distant tertiary organization setting to 40k, yet I still know a hell of a lot more than the average person, it appears, and the deconstruction of Obi-Wan, reducing him to a hapless hobo living out a hopeless life, looking not after Luke, but after... I'm not going to get into it because I'll just wander off on a goddamn tangent. I'm surprised it was this high, but again, the critic score is not a surprise. Or Andor, which was loved by the critics and also had a fairly zealous fan following. The only problem was it was also a very small fan following. I looked it up on IMDb. Even Obi-Wan Kenobi, it had like 4 times the number of critic reviews than Andor. It had many times the amount of audience reviews. Basically, Andor attracted a very small but fairly dedicated audience. You could even say that, in a way, and this sounds a bit absurd here, but hear me out. I feel like Andor was the first show that the wokeists actually embraced. Not merely because they wanted to be like, oh hey, it's diverse, blah, 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 blah. No, not for a political reason, that they actually kinda liked. In large parts because Andor is, well, it's wish fulfillment for the wokeist crowd. This is a group of people that have been desperately desiring a revolution, a good English today is difficult apparently. A good cause to fight for. A black versus evil scenario in which they could be the villains, the brave uprising. And Andor kinda gives them that in the titular main character, who is the blankest goddamn slate of the hesitant revolutionary, who is like, well, I don't really want to do this, but I guess I'll go along with everything regardless. To the point that, no, I genuinely think this might have actually been the first, like, popular, quote-unquote, wokeist property. It's their isekai. Again, I know it sounds like a bit absurd, but, it makes sense, doesn't it? The only problem is that the wokeist audience is absolutely tiny, which is why Andor failed to even rank on the viewership ratings. Hell, he got his ass kicked by Cobra Kai. Again, that thing was a massive flop. And yet it did actually finally manage to reach that minuscule part of the audience that was into this shit. Kind of remarkable in a way. Or Bel Air. Now this one's one that surprises me quite a bit because the critics aren't too hot on this, yet the audience was hotter on it than the critics. I hated Bel Air. I loathed it, but as somebody who grew up on The Fresh Prince, as we got everything like years and years or after you got it in America over here in Norway, Bel Air is the exact opposite of everything The Fresh Prince should ever be. It is a expressly and deeply racial show that cannot put it down for 1 second, where Carlton, the painfully white character who exists as comic relief, has PTSD because there are too many white people at his school, where Will Smith, the lovable rogue who got in a bunch of trouble, but at the end of the day is a really goddamn good guy. Well, the reason why he was sent to Bel Air was because he fired a gun at a play yard. It was because an actual literal... It wasn't like, well, I got in a fight at the ball pit or whatever. My memory's failing me right now. Got in a little bit of fight, there's a bunch of little gangster-looking dudes who walk around him in the intro movie and like push him around a little bit, play fighting bullshit. It wasn't that. He pissed off an actual legitimate honest-to-God gangster who put out a hit on his life. A gangster that it is heavily implied was later murdered by the Banks family's butler. What? What the fuck is this shit? It's the grimdark 40k version of the Fresh Prince, I guess. In the far distant future of 2022, everything is absolutely horrible. And there was there was not a moment of hope or positivity in the entire effing show. Like, good God, I think in episode 2, Carlton plants cocaine on fucking Will to try to get him tossed out of school. That show. And yeah, that was actually kind of well received, which confused the hell out of me. So, what you've got is, you've got a series, you've said it's more likely a season, an entire like the year, of the most obvious bombs imaginable, to lukewarm maybes to established franchises, to, well, you know, I wish you didn't make a television show of this thing I loved, to please jump off a tall burning building in, mainstream entertainment. And yet, in the realms of anime, the Japanese anime industry is now worth nearly 3 trillion yen, its largest ever recorded year since 2002. Now, bear in mind, this is coming from basically independent journalism here, done on this blog site, so don't take it as absolute gospel. But anime has been doing amazingly well, as has manga, for years and years now, as the Western entertainment market keeps effing failing. And of course, this is a bit of a double-edged sword, because it also means that Netflix, the harbinger of all that is evil, has started moving into anime as well, with mixed results, usually in the form of translation errors or their original animated content, like The Way of the House Husband, which I have heard very mixed reviews of. The manga is apparently amazing, so there's that, but a lot of people don't particularly like the anime. Personally, I'm looking forward to Lookism, because that is a manhwa with, some fucked up storylines, to put it mildly, and if that goes through uncensored, then we'll know that Netflix has truly actually turned a corner there. But I mean, a lot of this shit is genuinely pretty goddamn good. Vinland Saga, definitely. Arslan Senki, that one's pretty damn good as well. Toaru Kagaku no Railgun, I think. That one's not bad at all. Bastard's really good, and it is the least Netflixy show you are likely to ever see. Plus, we've even gotten some original shows, of course, in collaboration with others like Cyberpunk Edgerunners, which I think might actually be one of the best entertainment properties in 2022. I loved the hell out of Edgerunners, and more importantly, it was also a big win for the anti-censorship side, as CD Projekt Red, the owners of Cyberpunk 2077, of which of course Edgerunner is based on heavily and even, involved in their marketing, they told Studio Trigger that they weren't gonna have no lolly in their show because the Western audiences would go on that and go, child pornography, instead of, funny .jpeg moving on screen or something. And yet Studio Trigger then simply just raised up a middle finger and said, no, if you don't let the lolly in, we're not going to make a show for you. Screw yourselves. And what did CD Projekt Red do? Well, they surrendered. One good element of their recent spinelessness, I do suppose, and the product was an absolutely excellent anime series, which, incidentally, it launches, and then Cyber Project, goddammit, CD Projekt Red is all like, you know what, we're just gonna cancel all future support for 2077 and start working on 2 instead. Oh, I wonder why. Hell, I kinda hope that they'll simply just copy the storyline straight up, or at the very least, elements of it, like, the companion characters, which I've been bitching about for quite some time. And then there's the biggest example of them all, the Chinese Genshin Impact, which has made more than $4 billion on mobile devices in 2 years. If for some reason we needed an explanation for why waifu good, I think this is a pretty damn good one. And goddamn, Amazon too. Lost Ark. Lost Ark is a game that I think is pretty damn cool, actually, but Amazon has been censoring it for Western sensibilities ever since it came out. The problem is, of course, they are not censoring it for what is actually Western sensibilities. They are censoring it for a tiny minority of screeching harpies who, even if they love the shit out of your show, as is the case of Andor, can't even push it to a really good average audience score. 85 is like, okay, that's fine. It's not exceptional, it's not standout, it's not the 99 of a goddamn Edge Runners or something. Whereas China can release actual genuine spyware with some husbandos and waifus in it and rake in $4 billion. Lost Ark would have been a much greater success, Amazon, if you had simply just ported it over straight, instead of trying to adopt it to what you perceive as Western sensibilities, which don't even goddamn exist in the first place. But all of this now comes together to form a fairly coherent picture, doesn't it? Even with Andor, which I thoroughly do believe is actually the wokest isekai at this point, you still can't get a good enough score to justify it. You still can't get the audience in there to watch it in the numbers you need to justify a goddamn Star Wars property. Again, I say this every time, but this used to be the royal standard of entertainment. Fucking Star Wars. It was so far beyond literally anything else that it became... it became a thing. How do I put this? Like, the name, Star Wars, is a retarded name. Star and Wars. Wars amongst the stars. Space War. It's a dumb name, and yet nobody cares about the name because it has become a universe. It has become an entity, something literally anyone recognizes. It has had genuine massive cultural impact to the point that even to this day, people are buying Baby Yoda plushies as adults. Because, well, it's a thing. Like, there was an article a while ago, I'll see if I can find it, where they talked about how one of the biggest driving forces in the toy market right now wasn't children, it was goddamn adults buying presents for themselves. Gifts, essentially, for their geeky hobbies. And hey, I absolutely understand, as, well, I've had a couple of those hobbies myself, including, give me a second, as I have found a toy hobby that is even more expensive than 40k. Swords. I own like 15 of these damn things now, because, well, they're works of art, really. This is a French cuirassier sword from the Napoleonic War period, and it is just... it is beautiful, isn't it? But if I didn't have a superfluous amount of spending money, I wouldn't be buying what is essentially an enormous effing toy. So I can absolutely understand that in the realms of geekdom, yeah, the people probably spending most of the money is, well, people like me, and you all watching right now. And, well, we appear to have found something else to spend our money on. It is up to the major content services like Netflix to finally understand and embrace that and produce, well, more of this and a whole hell of a lot less of this. But if they're able to even begin to turn it around now, I don't know. I think at the very least we are going to see a drastic dip in mainstream entertainment content until you get one of those breakout shows that will re-establish the genre and once again make it, God help us all, popular. A word we should be very careful about using for anything in the future, lest it actually do become mainstream again. But hey, on the bright side, it does mean that we will be able to enjoy more niche entertainment again. God willing, at least. 2023. Let's hope it's a good year, eh? Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching, and I hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.